This is the next in the Patriot Minute series. I'm Grandpa Rick. We're going to talk about America's Heartland hero, Lieutenant Lyle Bouck. It was December 16th, 1944. 1,400 Panzer tanks and 410,000 men were gathered to spearhead a surprise attack against American forces in Europe in what became known as the Battle of the Bulge. The Nazis had hoped at that time to change the tide of war and thereby bring a swift and sudden victory to offer to give to Adolf Hitler. They had been beaten back by the Americans and the Allies, and now they were hoping to turn that tide. At a narrow gap in rough terrain on the German-Belgian border, the Losheim Gap, however, a little platoon of Americans, 18 men, led by one of the youngest officers in the U.S. Army, was determined to stop or slow the German advance at all costs. But let's look back. Let's step back just a bit. July 2nd, 1923, Lyle Bouck was born in Ohio. Later, he moved to Missouri with his family. Lyle's life was marked by grinding poverty. It was the Great Depression. His father was a carpenter, often out of work. His family of six, in fact, lived in a one-bedroom house. They had no indoor plumbing, but Lyle's parents instilled in him values of faith, hard work, and patriotism. The world at that time teetered on the brink of war. Lyle joined the Missouri National Guard. He was only 14 years old, but he needed the $1 per drill day that they paid him so that he could help his family. The Guard never asked his age, and he didn't offer it. Dedicated, organized, and intelligent, at 16, he was promoted to supply sergeant. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, Lyle's regiment was sent to protect the west coast of the U.S. from possible Japanese invasion. Soon, his commander recommended Lyle for officers' candidate school. At Fort Benning, he graduated incredibly, fourth in his class, one of the youngest commissioned officers in the U.S. Army, though he'd had very little formal education. Later, assigned to the 99th Infantry Division and sent to Europe. On Belgian soil, Lyle headed a recon platoon, setting up forward observation posts, capturing German soldiers, and gathering intelligence. But nothing in war is predictable. At the far right of the American lines, on the edge of the lines, and isolated, his 18-man recon platoon was ordered to dig into Elsenborn Ridge and monitor the village below. Lyle was told by his commander that no action was expected, but just keep an eye on the valley, just to be safe. The German army appeared to be in full retreat. All was quiet. But early the next morning, December 16th, 1944, Lyle and his men were awoken before dawn, hearing the rumble of lots of heavy armor rolling their way. Vastly outnumbered and outgunned, they faced a desperate decision. Lyle's men thought they should retreat. He told them, "We can't. If we do, the Germans will move in behind and take the rest of our division from the rear, surprise them. We have to hold out as long as possible till we get help," unquote. Then something occurred demonstrating the humanity of Lieutenant Bouck's men. As a line of German troops marched through the town below them, and just as his men were about to open up on the enemy with everything they had, a teenage girl ran up to the German commander, saying something to him, and then pointing in the direction of the hidden Americans. Lieutenant Bouck told his men to hold their fire. He knew if shooting started, the girl would be killed instantly. Their hesitation, however, gave the Germans a chance to dive for cover. The girl then fled safely back inside one of the houses. Bouck's platoon then opened fire. Their orders were to hold the road leading through the Losheim Gap, a natural pass cutting through rough terrain, and hold they did. During the 18-hour firefight, they held off an entire enemy battalion, upwards of 800 men, inflicting more than 100 casualties. Numbers varied from 90 to up to 400, however, disrupting the entire 6th Panzer Army's planned thrust through that gap. Under fire, repeatedly, Lyle moved from man to man, encouraging his men. He had skillfully placed each well-dug-in fire team to provide interlocking fields of fire. But relentlessly, the Germans came on, led by their 1st SS Panzer Division, pushed from the rear by the 6th Panzer Army. And they were stacking up further down the valley. As the sun rose, the Americans got a better view of their devastating marksmanship. Many enemy soldiers lay dead and dying in the field below. But they were running out of ammunition. The rest of the American forces further down the line were also under heavy assault at that time and could not help. Lieutenant Bouck called his men to him, telling them again that they must hold, which they did throughout that fateful day and into the evening. But after dark, a group of experienced German paratroopers flanked them. Caught in a deadly crossfire now and running out of ammunition, Bouck had no choice but to surrender. Amazingly, as Lieutenant Bouck took stock of the condition of his men, though most were wounded, none were killed. Taken prisoner, they were moved to the rear of the German lines. Eventually, they were rescued by advancing American forces. Bouck was freed 1 week before the war's end. He weighed only 114 pounds and was critically sick. All his men were, in fact, at that time near death, but each one of them survived. With how things turned out, Lieutenant Bouck, however, felt bad. He thought that they had failed. They'd run out of ammunition when they were trying to hold and had been captured. Later, he learned, however, that his platoon had delayed the lead German infantry elements from advancing for an entire day, causing German armored units to stack up for miles behind, totally disrupting the Germans' war plans and timetable. Instead of reaching the Meuse River on the battle's first day, as the Germans had planned, they went almost nowhere. The entire German north wing of the attack fizzled, all because a handful of skilled young Americans determined to hold their position no matter the cost. Still, because of confusion during the Battle of the Bulge, the U.S. Army did not recognize Bouck's platoon for its courageous stand for 37 years. But on October 25, 1981, the first year of the Reagan administration, the entire platoon was honored with a Presidential Unit Citation. Every member of the platoon was decorated, including 4 Distinguished Service Crosses, 5 Silver Stars, and 10 Bronze Stars with V for Valor. Official recognition, however, paled by comparison to the respect and admiration Lieutenant Lyle Bouck earned from his men. Alex Kershaw, in his book, great book, The Longest Winter, it was printed in 2005, said this, quote, "Had they not stood and held the Germans for that crucial 24 hours, the Battle of the Bulge would have been a great German victory." Bouck attributed his unit's success to the fact that all his men were expert marksmen, and they were skilled at protecting each other, working together and fighting as a team. Still, we can't forget, they were outnumbered approximately 40-1. By any measure, it was miraculous. The war ended. Lyle returned home. He was reintroduced to a former classmate, Lucille Zinzer. Bouck earned his high school diploma, and then he married Lucille. He attended Missouri Chiropractic College and graduated in 1949. He practiced for nearly 50 years. They had 5 children. 2 of his sons served as U.S. Navy pilots. Later, Lyle became an advocate for veterans' rights. His sense of duty extended beyond his service to build a better life for those who had served alongside him, for our wonderful veterans. Lyle Bouck died on December 2nd, 2016. He was 92 years old. Some great leaders in history seem destined from an early age. Bouck, however, came from the poorest of backgrounds, once more proving that American exceptionalism often originates in the great American heartland among her humble yet valiant, hardworking, and faith-driven citizens. Thank you, Lieutenant Lyle Bouck. I'm Grandpa Rick.